Welcome into the Week 11 Part 1 preview. We're going to go over 6 games of the Sunday and Monday night slate and just go over some start or sit type of questions. Talking about the fringe starters, of course, the main guys, the Mahomes and the Jalen Hurtses of the world are going to be starting. But we're going to talk about some of the fringe players and whether or not you should start or sit them based on their matchup. As always, like and subscribe to the channel, and we're just going to jump right into it with our first matchup. And by the way, this is from a half PPR point of view, just so you know, all the numbers and stats we throw at you is from a half PPR point of view. And the first game we're going to start with is the Cowboys at the Panthers. We'll start with the Cowboys side. You know, you're starting, obviously, Dak Prescott. You're starting CeeDee Lamb. You're going to start Jake Ferguson most likely, unless you have someone better, of course. To me, Jake Ferguson's a pretty easy top 10 tight end. If you have a Kelsey, a Hawkinson, a Trey McBride, I'd start over Ferguson. But if you have a Cole Kmet, Logan Thomas, David Njoku, and Ferguson, I would start Ferguson over those players. And then Tony Pollard. I'm still starting Tony Pollard. I know he's been quite the disappointment this year. Not the standard in which we all thought he would live up to, but just looking at it now in half PPR, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the last 5 games that he's played in have been disappointing, under double-digit points, under 8 points. Only one game of double-digit points, but there's been a lot of talk about it lately, about Tony Pollard. I feel like the Cowboys are going to try and get him going in this game. I feel like this is the game where he does get going a little bit. And the fact of the matter is, it's the second best matchup for running backs. The Carolina Panthers are probably the best matchup right now. Broncos are first, but that's probably a little inflated from the beginning of the year. You just look at it each week. I mean, Deontay Foreman last week had over 16 points. Jonathan Taylor over 15 points. The Houston guys got shut down. The Miami guys went off. So Carolina is the matchup for running backs, and it probably means that Dak and CD don't have the greatest week, but you're still starting those guys, and I'm still starting Tony Pollard. And then it comes down to someone like a Brandon Cooks. Now, the bye week, not too bad this week, not terrible. It's not like last week where a lot of really good teams were on bye. You can probably get away from Brandon Cooks, and especially in a game where I think they're going to be focusing on running the ball a little bit. I do want to avoid Brandon Cooks if I can. To me, he's like definitely not in 2 wide receiver leagues. In 3 wide receiver leagues, maybe he's a flex. I'd start him over guys like Romeo Doubs, potentially George Pickens. And just kind of looking at the list, Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson, but we're talking about like maybe a flex in a 3 wide receiver league. If I can avoid Brandon Cooks, I'd like to see it again. That's just basically the fact of the matter. There is, I'd like to see it at least one more time. Just double checking. I know he had a big game last week. He's had 2 good games in the last 3 weeks, so it's encouraging to see. But just a game that I think could be over by halftime type of game. Where the defense dominates and the run game dominates. So avoid Brandon Cooks if you can. And then on the Panthers side, I mean, man, it's so tough. You're still starting Adam Thielen. I know he's been disappointing lately. One thing that to keep in mind, so he's had basically his 3 worst weeks since week 1 have come in the last 3 weeks, and then he's had under 8 points in half PPR each of the last 2 weeks. And I know Dallas, tough defense and everything like that. Just kind of double checking what Dallas actually does against wide receivers. They give up the 3rd fewest points. One thing to keep in mind is they're changing back to Frank Reich as the play caller. They changed over, I think over the bye, they changed over to the offensive coordinator to call plays. Hasn't gone well. Frank Reich is taking it back, and that's basically coincides, the transition to the offensive coordinator coincides with Adam Thielen having his 3 worst games. So I would start him at least one more week with confidence, and then if he has another dud game, we can start talking about potentially moving away from him. But he's the only option on this team, and with Frank Reich taking back over, and that was again the weeks when he was going off was when Frank Reich was the coordinator. I'm going to start Thielen with confidence there. No one else I want to start with confidence. I mean, if I'm starting a running back, it is Chuba Hubbard. It's not Miles Sanders, but to me, he's outside of even low end running back 2. He's kind of a low end mid tier running back 3 for me. You're playing Dallas, and this could be a game again that's kind of over by halftime. Dallas gives up 9th fewest points to running backs. The only game that massive game they've really given up to running backs is James Conner, and then they gave up a good game to the 49ers guys where they got destroyed. But when Dallas's defense is on, they're on. Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson were able to. So if you're desperate, I would start Chuba Hubbard. Again, like if we're talking just kind of going over, I'd start Chuba Hubbard over guys like Deontay Foreman with Khalil Herbert coming back, over guys like the Rams guys. I'd start him over, Charbonnet. That's where we're at with Chuba Hubbard. Julio McLaughlin, Tajay Spears, I'd start him over, but I wouldn't start him over guys like Najee Harris. I'd actually probably start Darrell Henderson over. Actually, I think I'd start both Rams guys over Chuba Hubbard, to be honest. Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman, now that I think about it. I'd start like Jalen Warren, Ty Chandler, James Cook over Chuba Hubbard pretty easily. Khalil Herbert is going to be back. So, yeah, I'd probably start him over Deontay Foreman just because I don't know what that whole split's going to be with Roshan, Khalil, and Deontay Foreman. Deontay Foreman's actually been limited with an ankle injury, so I would avoid that. Avoid Chuba Hubbard if you can. I'm sure you have a better player. Just looking at real quick receivers that I would avoid or that I would start over Rashee Rice. I'd start over Chuba Hubbard. Deontay Johnson, obviously. Jacoby Myers still, even with Aiden O'Connell. Jahan Dotson, just more upside to me. This team could get absolutely shut down, and they could lean back more into Miles Sanders a little bit. Like Chuba Hubbard's had his run a little bit the last 2 weeks where he's had the majority of the carries. If you look at 15 carries in week 9, I believe. Last week 16 carries, or week 8. Week 9, 16 carries. Last week, 9 carries. And he hasn't done much with it. He's averaged like 3 yards a carry over those games, and he's still kind of splitting time with Miles Sanders. So avoid Chuba Hubbard if you can against a really bad matchup. And yeah, there's no one else you're not starting Bryce Young. I think Hayden Hurst is out, so you're not starting any of those guys. So moving on to our next matchup, the Steelers at the Browns. This is going to be an interesting one because you have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but they're also starting a backup quarterback. We'll start with the Steelers side. Obviously, you're not starting Kenny Pickett. Najee Harris, I think, is basically locking it back. He should be locked back into an easy RB2 start. Obviously, if you have better players than Najee Harris, go for it. But bad matchup, I understand. But the way I look at it, if this team's going to score a touchdown, it's like an 80% chance it's Najee Harris. They're going to feed him the ball. They have been all year. They haven't really gone away from it at all. I know they've been using Jalen Warren a little bit more, but just looking at Najee Harris's touches, 16 with 3 catches, 16 carries with 2 catches and 4 targets. Jacksonville game, I don't know what happened there, but 7 carries and 5 targets. He's getting targets as well. We're talking about 13 targets over the last 3 weeks. You're starting Najee. You just can't get away. It's hard to get away from potentially 20 touches, which is what he's possibly been averaging. Again, I know bad matchup and everything like that, but I'm fine with throwing him out there. I mean, if you're talking about Najee versus the Rams guys, I'm starting Najee. If you're talking about Najee versus Ty Chandler, I might lean Ty Chandler. If you're talking about Najee versus, we mentioned it, Chuba Hubbard, Kareem Hunt, Deontay Foreman, I'm going to lean Najee over those guys. So if you do have one of the, top, if you have multiples of the top 25 guys, you're probably going to start them over Najee. But if you're talking about, again, starting him over, Najee or Rico Dowdle, it's obviously Najee Harris. Jalen Warren is also in that boat too. Like, he's basically a low-end RB2 this week. Bad matchup, but he's been catching the ball. He's been getting his touches. They want to run the ball. This is the Steelers' new formula. Are they going to be able to? Well, we'll see. It's Cleveland, right? Just double checking. I'm pretty sure they're pretty high, but they give up the 7th fewest points to running backs. Something to keep in mind, though, is, with Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting this week, I don't think he's going to be as bad as last week, but he could be putting his offense in a bad spots, consistent 3-and-outs, turnovers, and that could tire out the defense. I mean, we saw it in the game where he started the last time, where I think their Cleveland offense, they gave up a lot of defense, gave up a lot of points, but they were kind of put into bad situations, bad field position, things like that. So that could happen this week. I'm fine if Warren and Najee Harris are your RB2s and they kind of have been all year long. I'm fine with starting them and not worrying about it. If you have, again, multiple guys that are better, go for it. With the wide receivers on this team, Deontay is the guy I like. Again, I still think he's going to get the targets and everything like that. So to me, he's an easy start in 3 wide receiver leagues and 2 wide receiver leagues. Maybe not so much. Like I'd start Deontay over Godwin. I'd start him over Addison if Jefferson's back. I'd say Flowers already played. I'd start Deontay over Rashee Rice, Jacoby Meyer, Jahan Dotson, these guys. So he's like a low-end wide receiver 3 for me. And then the George Pickens, I want to avoid. Again, Cleveland, really good defense. They should shut down this offense pretty well. Should be a kind of like a 14-10, 17-14 type of game. So I want to avoid George Pickens if I can. To me, he's outside of he's a wide receiver 4 this week. So that's where I list those guys. Deontay is the guy I want to start if I'm starting anyone on this offense. Yeah, you're not starting any tight ends. I know Freiermuth might come back, but I want to avoid that for his first week back. On the Browns side, another tough one because, again, it's DTR starting. And again, I do think he's going to be better than what he was last week. He was kind of throwing in last minute, hey, you're starting against the Ravens. No preparation really as the starter because of the Watson stuff. So I think he'll be better than what he showed with a full week of practice and a slightly easier matchup, I'd say. Not an easy matchup, but easier than the Ravens. So, guys like Jerome Ford to me are basically a must start at this point. If you're choosing between guys like Pacheco or Rashad White or Devin Singletary, if Dameon Pierce is out, I'd lean those guys just because they have a better matchup and they're on probably they're in a better situation at least with their offense. If you talk about James Ford versus, not Gus Edwards, the Steelers guys, the Rams guys, and Henderson and Freeman, then I'd lean Ford here. The Kareem Hunt is a little bit of a different story. I'm just double checking. He's kind of their goal line back, which is nice. But if this team's not going to have a hard time scoring and moving the ball, I don't really like it. He's under 40% of the snaps basically all year long. Jerome Ford is still the guy. Kareem Hunt is probably going to get goal line touches, but he's not really catching the ball. I mean, he has He has looks like 9 catches on the year, and 6 of them came in 2 games. He's had 3 over the last 4 weeks, and that includes only 5 targets over the last 4 weeks. So I want to avoid Kareem Hunt if I can. Just I don't know how much this offense is going to move the ball. So just bench Kareem Hunt. Like I'd start guys like Royce Freeman, Khalil Herbert, even Zach Charbonnet potentially over Kareem Hunt. I think they're going to get a similar amount of touches, and I just think Charbonnet is going to get a little bit more value with the catches. So that's where I'm at with Kareem Hunt. Njoku, if you've been starting him because he's been playing well, just continue to start him. He to me he's a top 12, just outside the top 12 guy. But I'm not going to drop him and try and pick up someone else unless there's obviously like a Logan Thomas out there or something like that. Then I'd start, or Cole Kmet for whatever reasons out on the waivers. I'd start. These are the guys I'd start over Njoku. Obviously, Kelsey, Hawkinson, Andrews. I would have Laporta, McBride, Kincaid, Kittle, Schultz, Ingram, Ferguson, Kmet, Thomas. And I think that's where the list starts. If you want to think about Conklin, it's a little bit of a risk, but I'm okay with it just because of the quarterback situation for them. I'm just going to really quick double check, and I believe that when DTR started his game, it's October 1st. Okay, October 1st, Njoku had 6 catches for 46 yards. So he actually had a decent game. So I'm fine with starting Njoku. I think he's a good player, and they want to get him involved. On the that's it for obviously the defenses you're starting. On to the next game, the Bears at the Lions. Bears side of things, I'm probably starting Justin Fields unless I have someone better. Again, and maybe you do because you picked him up. Again, here's the guys I would start over Fields. Mahomes, Hurts, Jackson, I would have. Tua, Dak, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, I'd start over Fields first week back. Jared Goff, I'd start over Fields. Herbert, Sam Howell, because of the matchup, I'd start over Fields. To me, the questions are Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy. I think that's where the questions are. If you want safety, go with Brock Purdy. If you want upside, go with Justin Fields. Kyler is another one. I'm kind of fine either way here. I'm just double checking. Houston has given up the 12th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. The Lions, which is whose Fields is playing, have given up the 10th most. I'd probably lean Fields, to be honest, but I'm not going to argue. It's kind of a coin flip, in my opinion. I'd start Fields. I'd start Josh Dobbs over Fields, and that's about it. So I'd start Fields over Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Geno, Baker, all those guys. So first week back, you want to see how he's going to look. Could be a little rusty, and he's playing a pretty good defense, I'd say. Not the best defense, but a pretty good defense. The running backs are kind of a mess. If I can avoid this week, I want to, because I just don't know how it's all going to turn out. Khalil Herbert's going to be coming back. He practiced in full, but how much are they going to use him? That can affect Deontay Foreman, who's been limited with an ankle injury. Roshan Johnson's still there. Now, I will say this. If Deontay Foreman doesn't play because of the ankle injury, then I'm fine with bumping up Khalil Herbert as a flex, but a really bad matchup against the Lions, and you just don't know how this whole situation is going to work out. I want to avoid these guys if I can. Lions fifth fewest points to running back. So, and one of those games it was a little skewed just because of, in terms of yardage, they haven't given up more than on the ground 67 yards. It's the highest they've given up. In the receiving game, they have given up 80, but that was a 180-yard catch to Gus Edwards, kind of a fluke. Other than that, it was 48 yards is the highest they've given up in receiving yards. Both those rushing and receiving were to Austin Eckler, a really good running back. So just avoid him. You're going to need a touchdown, basically. Yeah. And Cole Kmet, I'm starting. To me, he's like a top 5 tight end this week. So I'm starting him. And DJ Moore, I'm starting as well. With Fields back, you hope that they get this. And maybe he runs a little less. I know it was like a finger injury, right? That he had. So maybe not. But to me, DJ Moore is back in the lineups with kind of no questions, at least unless we see bad games from him with Fields. On the Lions side, it's pretty easy. You're starting Jared Goff most likely, unless you have someone better. Again, the only guys I would start over Goff are Mahomes, Hurts, Jackson, Tua, Dak, Josh Allen, and then probably CJ Stroud. But to me, it's a little bit of a coin flip. I'd probably lean CJ Stroud, but if you want to start Jared Goff over him, that's fine. To me, you can't really go wrong. They both have really good matchups, so I'd start Goff over Kyler. I'd start Herbert over Goff too, who I think Herbert has a pretty good matchup as well against the Packers. So if Keenan Allen plays, if Keenan Allen's out, I'm starting Goff. And I guess I could look that up. I'm pretty sure he's going to be questionable here. Just double checking. Yeah, he practiced in full, so I think Keenan Allen's going to play. So I'm fine starting Herbert for upside over Goff. You're starting the running backs, both of them, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. To me, they're both top 12 guys. You're starting Sam Laporta, obviously, and you're starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Lions are really easy. You're starting all those guys. No other receiver I want to start for the Lions right now. I mean, the next guy is Josh Reynolds, but he's not even close. He's in super deep leagues, maybe. So yeah, we'll just move on to the Chargers at the Packers. And we will start with the Chargers here. Again, Herbert, if he's your guy and you have no one else, you're fine. I'm fine with starting him. Yeah, again, like Stroud, Allen, Prescott, Tua, Lamar, Hurts, Mahomes are the only guys I no-brainer start over him. I mean, even Stroud, if you could make an argument to start Herbert just because, it's Justin Herbert. He's still a really good quarterback. Keenan Allen's going to play, so I think there's a little more upside with like a Herbert versus Goff, and I'd start Herbert over Kyler, Sam Howell, Purdy, Fields. So that's where I'm at with Herbert. Austin Eckler, you're obviously starting. Keenan Allen, you're starting if he's in there. And that's about it. If you want to start Quentin Johnston, I get it. Donald Parham, if you need a desperation flex at tight end with, I think Gerald Everett's going to miss this game. He didn't practice all week with I believe a chest injury. Yeah, chest injury. So he's a guy that you could get away from if you want. Parham is a guy that you can desperation flex if you want. The only really questions are the other receivers in this game. Quentin Johnston, for upside, he did get more involved against the Lions, which is nice to see, and he's a rookie receiver, and we got to give him some time. Green Bay gives up the fifth fewest points to receivers, so they're pretty tough. You can run the ball on them. If you're talking about guys like Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson, Jaden Reed, Brandon Cooks, even, I'd probably lean not Brandon Cooks. I'd lean Quentin Johnston over those first three guys, Moore, Wilson, and Reed. Romeo Dobbs, I'd lean Quentin Johnston. Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, I'd lean Quentin Johnston. But if you're talking about Gabe Davis, I'd start Quentin Johnston over Jerry Jeudy. I just don't like what I see from Jeudy. But if you're talking about Quentin Johnston versus like Jahan Dawson, Jacoby Myers, Rashee Rice, I'm going to take those guys over Quentin Johnston. I just want to see more out of him and a little bit more of a dominant game before I'm confident at all in starting him. So you shouldn't have to make that decision. On the Packers side, man, I just want to avoid everyone all the time. I don't want to start Jordan Love. You should have a better option by this point, unless you're in super flex leagues, of course. But to me, he's outside of the top 15. Just double checking their injury reports. Aaron Jones has been, again, limited all week. I think he's been like that all year, essentially. Well, since he came back, at least. I'm just double checking his snap percentage here. He is playing over 55% of the snaps the last 2 weeks, which is was good to see. He's getting 6 targets each of the last 2 weeks. I'm going to fire him up against this matchup most likely, just because he's one of those players that can bust off a big one. So to me, he has the potential to be a top 12 guy, although the Chargers have been a little better stopping the run this year. I don't think they're that great necessarily, but and the Lions kind of ran all over them, but they do give up the 5th. No, that's receivers. They give up the 6th most points. Okay, so I thought they were a little better. They're not really. So yeah, Aaron Jones, I'm fine with starting. AJ Dillon, I don't want to start just because, again, don't think he's a very good player. But I can't ignore the fact that he's going to play 45% of the snaps, and he's going to get 12 touches, maybe, if they're winning more. Desperation flex if you need them. I'm starting the Rams guys over him. I'm starting Kareem Hunt over AJ Dillon. I'm starting Zach Charbonnet over AJ Dillon. If you're talking about AJ Dillon versus Khalil Herbert and Tajay Spears, okay, I can lean AJ Dillon there. Rico Dowdle, I can lean AJ Dillon. So again, he's kind of that 1B or second running back that's going to get 10 to 15 touches, and you kind of need a touchdown for it to pay off. He's in that group with the Kareem Hunts, the Khalil Herberts, the Zach Charbonnets type of guys. I just don't think he's a very talented player. And, I feel like with some of those guys, they can bust off a long run, like a Charbonnet, for example, whereas I don't know if AJ Dillon's going to do that consistently. So I want to avoid him. The receivers, another group that I really want to avoid. There's no one guy that really stands out. If I'm going to start one of them, it's probably going to be Romeo Doubs, just because he's catching touchdowns. And just double checking their injury reports. Christian Watson's been limited again. I just want to avoid Christian Watson when I can, and Romeo Doubs, to be honest. 8 targets over the last 2 weeks for Doubs is not great. But, he does have 6 touchdowns on the year. So that's pretty good. He's going to need a touchdown to do well. He's had over 80 yards receiving once this year. You basically need a touchdown in order he's a touchdown or bust receiver, and I want to avoid those guys. I would start Quentin Johnston over Romeo Doubs. I just think there's more potential there. Pickens over Romeo Doubs, JSN over Romeo Doubs, especially if Lockett's out. Gabe Davis over Doubs, Jahan Dotson. Also, all these guys over Christian Watson simultaneously. Don't want to avoid him, or I want to avoid him as well. He's had only one game over 50 yards, one game over 40 yards this year. Just not happening. They're targeting him deep, and Jordan Love's not very accurate. So I want to avoid both those guys. They're wide receiver 4s for me. Jaden Reed's interesting. I would put him on my bench and stash him just to see if he's a rookie receiver kind of coming on. We talk about it all the time with rookie receivers that they come on in the middle to second half of the year. Well, Jaden Reed, 5 targets, 5 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. I think he had the best game for a Packers receiver, so he's a guy that I'm okay with stashing. But Luke Musgrave, get away from him if you can. But I'd start Donald Parham over Musgrave, to be honest. I just feel more confident with him catching a touchdown than I do Musgrave. So Cardinals Texans is our second to last game here. With the Cardinals, we'll start with them. Kyler Murray is an interesting one because he looked good last week. He ran the ball a little bit. Now, the problem is you probably have someone else because Kyler Murray was on IR all year. So here's the guys again. I would start confidently over Kyler Murray. Mahomes, Hurts, Jackson, Tua, Dak, Allen, Stroud, Goff, and Herbert are the guys. The questions start coming with like the Howes, the Purdys, the Fields, the Dobbses. I'd probably start Josh Dobbs over Kyler Murray right now. I'd probably start Sam Howell over Kyler Murray just because of the matchup. Brock Purdy, if you need a little bit of safety, a safe 18 points, I'd lean Purdy. If you want some upside, I'd go with Murray. Maybe if you played Lamar Jackson and some, Thursday night game. And then Justin Fields is a tough one. To me, it's a coin flip. I like Kyler's matchup more. I think Fields at this point is a little bit better of a runner, which is of the upside. So if you're talking about Kyler Murray versus like Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Geno, I'm starting Kyler Murray. So that is where I'm at with him. James Conner, I'm going to start. Pretty good matchup. And although Houston's been better at stopping the run, but to me, I'm starting James Conner. His first week back, he was the main guy. Now they did bring in Michael Carter, who could take third down plays from him, but I look at last week. The biggest concern is that he didn't get any targets. So if that, I don't think that's going to keep up. I think he'll get 2 or 3 at least. But if it does keep up, then we can start talking about next week about benching him. Still, he's going to get 15 plus touches on the ground. So I'm fine with firing him up. And Houston gives up the 14th most fantasy points, so they're solid. Marquise Brown, I do want to throw out there. Once again, I think he could have had a big touchdown that Kyler just overthrew him. So I'm going to throw him out there in most leagues, even 2 wide receiver leagues, 3 wide receiver leagues for sure. If you have multiple guys ranked in the top 20, start them over Marquise Brown, obviously, but I'm fine with starting Marquise Brown. And yeah, Trey McBride is a must start. Texans, I've already talked about it. Stroud is at this point a must start unless you have, a Mahomes or Dak or Tua over him. Don't even really need to talk about CJ Stroud. The running backs, I'm just going to double check the injury reports here just to get the final one, the Friday one in. Double checking. Damian Pierce did not practice, limited. I'm starting Devin Singletary. To me, he's almost not a must start, but he's a top 20 guy this week, just seeing how they fed him. I think they want to get the run game going, not just rely completely on CJ Stroud, because I don't think that's a winning formula necessarily. Like, they need to be able to run the ball a little bit. And they gave him 30 touches last week. I think he gets 15 plus touches in a positive game script game, most likely. So to me, he's a top 20 guy. Nico Collins is a start if he's playing. Tank Dell is a start if he's playing. You can't get away. Dalton Schultz is a start. This team is just offensively one of the best teams in the NFL, for these fantasy players. So I'm starting them all if I can. They can have boom games. Texans are pretty easy at this point. Last game on this video is the Titans at the Jags. For the Titans, it's really, I'm still starting Derrick Henry. I know he had a bad game. They could be losing in this game, and Henry doesn't perform as well in games where they're losing, but I'm still starting Derrick Henry. And that's basically it as like a must start. DeAndre Hopkins is probably a must start. To me, he's still in the top 24. We saw him have a monster game with Will Levis, and then we've seen a couple of okay games. But the fact of the matter is, he still had 20 targets over the last 2 weeks. They just haven't been great targets. So I'm going to lean with the target volume here, and I'm going to hope he gets potentially double-digit targets, and he does well with it. So I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, and that's really it for this team. I don't want to start anyone else. Tajay Spears is like a desperation flex in PPR leagues, but not a must start. And then on the Jags side, like, I'm avoiding Trevor Lawrence if I can. Again, these are all the guys that I would start Trevor Lawrence or over Trevor Lawrence. Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, Tua, Dak, Allen, Stroud, Goff, Herbert, Kyler, Howell, Purdy, Fields, Dobbs. That's probably where the list ends. I maybe Russell Wilson, but I'd probably lean Lawrence over Russell Wilson, Geno, Love, and maybe even Geno over Lawrence. I'm just kind of thinking that one in my head, but I might lean. I do feel like it's a good matchup. Tennessee is for Lawrence. Just double checking that I'm right there. I'm not giving you bad information. well, 11th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, but they played Baker, Kenny Pickett, the Atlanta guys the last 3 weeks, so I think that's skewed it just a little bit. And Baker had 19 points on them, so and they played like Minshew coming in for Anthony Richardson, so it's been a little skewed. Yeah, I do think they want to get Lawrence going and kind of silence everyone that's been saying like he's not an elite quarterback, which I'm one of them. So I would avoid him if I can, but I'd still start him over guys like Russell Wilson and Geno Smith. So ETN, you're obviously starting. Christian Kirk to me is a must start. Evan Ingram is a must start. Calvin Ridley, personally, I'm still starting him in 3 wide receiver leagues. If you want to move off of him, that's fine. I would start guys like Marquise Brown, Nico Collins, Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore over him, but I'd still start Ridley over guys like Amari Cooper. I'd start Amari Cooper over Ridley. Sorry, I'd still start Ridley over guys like Godwin, Boyd, Deontay, Rashid Rice, just because of the upside. Again, I do think they want to get this team going, and the fact of the matter is Lawrence's best games have come with Ridley playing well. So I don't think there's a I think the solution is there for these guys. So, yeah. And Evan Ingram, like I said, is a must start. So that's it for this video. We'll be back with 7 more matchups, including the Monday night one in the next game's video. As always, like and subscribe. We'll catch you guys next time.